Sophia was a name that resonated throughout the streets of Lagos, Nigeria. Known for her beauty, wealth, and family legacy, she was an heiress to one of the most powerful business empires in the country. Yet, behind the glamorous image, Sophia had always felt like something was missing. Surrounded by admirers, most of whom were men eager to win her affection for the wealth she carried rather than her heart, Sophia found herself drifting in a world where love seemed like a distant dream. Sophia's parents had built their empire from the ground up. With hard work, relentless determination, and a commitment to excellence, they had achieved success beyond their wildest dreams. As their only child, Sophia was set to inherit everything, but she never felt that inheritance would bring her happiness. It was always about the wealth, the prestige, the power, and never about the person she was. She often found herself in the company of men, dressed in their finest suits, flashing bright smiles, and speaking words that were smooth like poetry. They made her feel like the most desirable woman in the room, but Sophia wasn't fooled. She could see through their flattery, and she knew deep down that they were more interested in her money than in who she truly was. This realization had left her jaded and cynical, believing that real love didn't exist, at least not for someone like her. Her hopes of ever finding true love had been all but extinguished until the day she met Benjamin. Benjamin was different from the others. He wasn't entranced by her wealth or dazzled by her beauty. Instead, he treated her like any other person. He was calm, focused, and polite. He worked as the branch manager of one of her family's companies, a position her father had entrusted him with, and he did his job well. But what intrigued Sophia most was how unaffected he seemed by the lavish lifestyle she was accustomed to. He didn't shower her with compliments or buy her expensive gifts. He listened to her talk about her dreams, laughed at her silly jokes, and made her feel comfortable in her own skin. Over time, Sophia found herself spending more and more time with Benjamin. What started as casual chats about business and family at company events soon blossomed into something deeper. They began to go out for dinners, long walks, and quiet conversations. Slowly, Sophia found herself feeling something she hadn't felt in years: hope. She allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Benjamin cared for her and not for the wealth she represented. However, her friends and family were skeptical. "Sophia, he's too good to be true," her best friend, Lisa, warned her. "You're rushing into things. Be careful." Her parents echoed the same concerns. They loved her dearly and wanted nothing more than to see her happy, but they worried that Benjamin might not be as genuine as he seemed. Sophia, however, waved off their concerns. "He's different," she insisted. "I know what I'm doing." And so, despite the warnings, she married Benjamin. The day he proposed to her, in a small, candlelit garden, was one of the happiest moments of her life. He had made her feel like she was the only woman in the world. She said yes, convinced that she had finally found the love she had been waiting for. At first, married life was everything Sophia had dreamed of. Benjamin was attentive, thoughtful, and always made her feel special. He would surprise her with breakfast in bed, hold her hand during walks, and talk about starting a family one day. She truly believed she had found her soulmate. But as the months passed, small changes began to emerge in Benjamin's behavior. He started spending more time at work, taking longer business trips, and when he was home, he seemed distracted. He would check his phone constantly and rarely seemed interested in their conversations. At first, Sophia convinced herself it was just the pressures of work, but deep down, she couldn't help but wonder if something was wrong. Was he growing distant? Or was it just the inevitable stress of managing a family business? Sophia ignored the nagging doubts in her mind, convincing herself that everything would be fine. She loved Benjamin, and that was enough. But as time went on, the small cracks in their relationship became harder to ignore. One night, after a particularly lonely evening spent waiting for Benjamin to come home, Sophia began to wonder if her friends and family had been right all along. Was she simply blind to the truth? Was Benjamin only interested in her for her money? The doubt gnawed at her, but she pushed it away, determined to hold on to the life they had built together. Lisa, her closest friend, was always there for her. Sophia hoped that, with time, Lisa would come around and accept Benjamin. However, whenever Sophia mentioned Benjamin, Lisa would either look away or change the subject. "Just be careful," she would say, her voice filled with concern. Sophia laughed off her friend's warnings, insisting that Lisa was overreacting. But deep down, a small seed of doubt had taken root. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Life continued on, and Sophia kept herself busy with charity work, trying to distract herself from the gnawing emptiness that had taken over her heart. Benjamin was still around, but he felt distant, as though he was slipping further and further away from her. Every time she tried to bring up her concerns, he would reassure her with a laugh and a kiss, brushing aside her worries. "I'm right here," he would say. "You have nothing to worry about." Sophia wanted to believe him, but sometimes, words alone couldn't quiet the doubts within her. Yet, she reminded herself that she had trusted him enough to marry him, and she couldn't let fear ruin the happiness they had built together. Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. Sophia had been attending a charity event when the rain began to pour down in sheets. The roads became slick, and the driver could hardly see through the windshield. Just a few blocks from home, a car came speeding out from a side street, slamming into their vehicle. The next thing Sophia knew, she was lying in a hospital bed, trapped in a world of silence and darkness. Panic gripped her as she tried to make sense of her surroundings, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't hear anything or see anything. She reached out for help, but all that escaped her lips was a weak murmur. Doctors rushed in, and though she couldn't hear their voices, she could feel their presence and their touch. The days that followed were a blur of confusion. She learned that the accident had cost her both her sight and her hearing. The once vibrant and independent Sophia was now vulnerable and isolated in her own body, completely dependent on others for everything. As the days passed, she became aware of the changes in Benjamin's behavior. His visits were cold, distant. The warmth and tenderness he had once shown her seemed to have disappeared. She could sense it even though she couldn't hear or see. The hand that used to stroke her hair now felt like a quick, dismissive pat. His hugs were brief and hollow, as though he were no longer emotionally connected to her. Soon after she was discharged from the hospital, Sophia returned home, but it was no longer the home she had once known. The house, once filled with love, now felt cold and empty. She was completely alone. The world outside was silent, and the once comforting environment now felt like a prison. Benjamin's visits became increasingly rare. He would leave early in the morning and return late at night, sometimes not at all. Sophia lay in bed, waiting for him to come home, but he never did. She ached with loneliness, questioning everything she had once believed about their relationship. Had he really loved her? Or had he only been interested in the riches she could provide? Her only visitor during this bleak time was her best friend, Lisa. At first, Lisa's visits provided Sophia with some comfort. She held her hand, helped her around the house, and sat with her during the long, quiet days. But soon, Sophia began to notice subtle changes in Lisa's behavior. There were whispered conversations, too many private moments between Lisa and Benjamin that made her uneasy. She couldn't understand what was happening, but something wasn't right. One evening, as she lay on the couch, Sophia caught a faint but familiar smell, Benjamin's cologne. Her heart skipped a beat. But instead of feeling comforted, she tensed. She felt Lisa's hand leave hers, and then there was the sound of hushed whispers. Sophia wanted to turn toward them, to confront them, but she was trapped in her own silence, unable to do anything. The next morning, Lisa was gone. Sophia's suspicions grew stronger, but she had no way of confronting either of them without being sure of what was happening. Days turned into weeks, and the strange behavior continued. Benjamin and Lisa seemed to grow closer. When Sophia tried to reach out to Benjamin, his hand would pull away. When she tried to embrace him, he would stiffen. It was as though she had become invisible to them. One evening, Sophia lay on the couch, unable to sleep. She smelled both Lisa and Benjamin's cologne, and this time, she could sense their closeness. She heard the faintest whispers, followed by something that shattered her heart, the unmistakable feeling of betrayal. Although she couldn't see or hear them, she knew, deep down, that Benjamin and Lisa were having an affair. They had been using her trust, her vulnerability, and her wealth to fulfill their own desires. Sophia's world crumbled. She had been deceived by the two people she trusted most. The pain of betrayal was unbearable, but it also ignited a fire within her, a fire that had been buried beneath her pain and despair. And with that fire, Sophia decided she would no longer be a victim. She would take back control of her life. She had a plan, and she would make them regret underestimating her. Sophia had always prided herself on her intelligence and sharp instincts. She had learned to navigate the business world, managing her family's empire, and had built a life of luxury that many envied. But even the most calculated heiress couldn't have prepared herself for the sting of betrayal. As she lay there in the darkness, alone and isolated, an idea began to take root. She couldn't let Benjamin and Lisa think they had won. She couldn't remain a passive observer in her own life. It was time for a new plan, a plan that would expose their lies and leave them scrambling. Sophia didn't need her sight or hearing to understand one thing: they were taking advantage of her vulnerability. They thought she was weak, but they were wrong. This would be her opportunity to show them just how wrong they were. The first step in her plan was to act. She had to make them believe that her blindness and deafness had completely shattered her confidence. They had seen her as a wealthy, sheltered woman, but they didn't know what she was capable of when pushed to her limits. She needed them to underestimate her at all costs. So, she played the role of the helpless, needy wife. Benjamin's behavior had been increasingly distant, but now it seemed to reach a breaking point. He no longer even bothered to hide his affection for Lisa. They exchanged secret texts and quiet phone calls when they thought she wasn't listening. They even had the audacity to talk about their future together, planning what they would do with her money once she was gone. They hadn't yet realized that Sophia had been listening all along. Her ears, though impaired, were still sharp enough to catch snippets of their conversation when they got too close. She heard them laugh at her behind closed doors, mocking her inability to defend herself. But every word they spoke only fueled her desire for revenge. Sophia's first move was to give Benjamin and Lisa the false impression that she had completely given up. She refused to confront either of them, even though the growing evidence of their betrayal was unbearable. Benjamin's distant behavior continued, and Lisa, ever the enabler, grew bolder in her attempts to cover up the affair. They began to arrive together at family gatherings, always by each other's side, acting as if nothing had changed. But Sophia knew better. She had already begun laying the groundwork for her next move. Sophia's family had always supported her, but they had no idea what was really happening behind closed doors. She couldn't let them know the truth, not yet. She needed to play her cards carefully, making them believe she was a shadow of the woman she once was. She began canceling plans with friends, refusing to attend meetings or events where her presence was expected. Whenever anyone came to visit, she put on a show, acting as if she was a broken woman, too consumed by grief to care about anything else. She became an expert in acting weak, in allowing her frustration to boil over in private, so that Benjamin and Lisa would see her vulnerability. She even began to feign fits of depression, letting them believe she was too fragile to do anything for herself. Every time Benjamin tried to approach her with concern, she pushed him away, as though she couldn't stand the sight of him anymore. Sophia's silence became her weapon. Benjamin, unaware of her plans, thought he had all the time in the world. He became more comfortable in his deceit, assuming that Sophia had no ability to fight back. Lisa, too, believed Sophia's silence meant defeat. They began to ignore her more blatantly, thinking they could continue their affair in peace without any repercussions. But what they didn't realize was that Sophia was quietly taking control. She started to manipulate their actions without them even knowing it. She had learned enough about her family's business dealings to begin making small but significant changes. She quietly reached out to her lawyers, her financial advisors, and some of the key people in her family's business empire. She subtly redirected funds and made decisions that would soon come back to haunt Benjamin and Lisa. Sophia's silence was a carefully crafted facade. Behind closed doors, she was studying every move Benjamin made. She hired private investigators to follow him, to get a detailed account of his activities. The evidence of his affair with Lisa was undeniable. What they didn't know was that Sophia had been gathering it all. She kept a hidden file of every photograph, every video clip, and every witness statement from the private investigators. Sophia knew that revenge wasn't just about making them suffer, it was about making sure they never forgot the price of betrayal. She began to sow distrust between them. She subtly leaked information to people who might be interested in knowing about Benjamin's financial decisions, which had recently become riskier as he grew more focused on Lisa. With every move, Sophia ensured that Benjamin and Lisa were being watched. The world they were trying to build together would soon crumble under the weight of their lies. Months passed, and Benjamin and Lisa grew bolder. Benjamin's behavior toward Sophia became more dismissive, treating her as if she were an inconvenience. Lisa, too, grew careless, sending Sophia looks of pity whenever their paths crossed. They didn't realize that every moment of arrogance would soon become their undoing. Sophia had been playing the role of the helpless, blind woman for so long that Benjamin had begun to forget who she truly was. He assumed that she had completely withdrawn from the world, that she was no longer a threat. But Sophia was far from helpless. One evening, when Benjamin and Lisa thought they were finally alone, Sophia decided to make her move. She had already arranged for a photographer to capture their secret meeting in a secluded part of the mansion. As they sat close together, whispering in hushed voices, Sophia made sure to be in the right position to overhear every word. She smiled to herself as she heard them plotting how to get rid of her once and for all. Suddenly, she appeared in the doorway, standing there without a sound, her once frail form now exuding confidence. "I can hear everything, Benjamin," she said quietly, her voice cold and sharp. Benjamin froze, his eyes widening in shock. He had never expected to be confronted by Sophia, not like this. Lisa, too, was visibly startled, her face turning pale. Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady but powerful. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I couldn't see what was happening under my own roof? You both thought I was weak, but I've been listening. I've been watching. And now it's time for you to pay." Benjamin stammered, his face a mixture of guilt and disbelief. "Sophia, I didn't know how to." "How to what?" Sophia interrupted. "How to hide your lies? How to betray me and expect me to remain silent? You thought I wouldn't fight back. But I've been planning this, Benjamin. Every move you made has been tracked. Every lie you told has been documented. And now, I have the power to make sure everyone knows the truth." Lisa tried to speak, but Sophia raised a hand, silencing her. "You're just as guilty. You thought you could have it all, didn't you? My husband, my money, my life. Well, it's over. Your affair, your lies, everyone will know about it soon enough." Sophia turned to Benjamin. "You think I'm just a helpless woman, but you're wrong. I built my life on my own terms, and now I'm going to make sure you both regret what you've done." With that, Sophia walked out of the room, her head held high. She knew it was only a matter of time before everything she had orchestrated came to light. It didn't take long for the truth to come crashing down. News of Benjamin's affair with Lisa spread like wildfire. Sophia's family, once blind to what had been happening in their daughter's life, now understood the depth of the betrayal. Benjamin's standing in the family business quickly deteriorated as his reckless decisions and personal affairs became public knowledge. His credibility was shattered, and soon, he was removed from his position as the manager of the family business. As for Lisa, her involvement in the affair was exposed, and her own reputation was tarnished beyond repair. The two of them became the subject of gossip and ridicule, their once promising future together now in ruins. Sophia, however, emerged victorious. Her reputation as the powerful, calculating heiress was intact, and the world began to see her for who she truly was, an intelligent woman who could hold her own in any situation. Her silence, her blindness, and her supposed helplessness had all been part of her master plan. She had allowed herself to be underestimated, and when the time was right, she took back control of her life in the most dramatic way possible. Sophia had been through betrayal, heartbreak, and deception, but she was stronger for it. She was no longer just the heir to a fortune, she was a force to be reckoned with. And anyone who dared to cross her would soon learn that she was not someone to be underestimated. The story of Sophia's secret revenge against Benjamin and Lisa would go down in history as one of the greatest acts of cunning and strength the business world had ever seen. And Sophia, once the blind and vulnerable woman, had proven that true power came not from wealth or appearance, but from resilience and the ability to turn one's pain into triumph.